For more, let's bring in Chris Gunness. He's the director of the Myanmar Accountability Project and joins us from Timor-Leste's capital, Dili. Good to have you back with us, Chris. This is the first full genocide case that the ICJ has heard in more than a decade. Why is this moment so significant both for the Rohingya and for international law?
Well, if you are a victim of some of the most appalling atrocity crimes that mankind has seen, i.e. those perpetrated by the Myanmar junta in 2017, 2018 against defenseless villagers, women, children, men, women were gang raped in front of their entire villages. Whole villages were burned down. There was a massive exodus into Bangladesh. If you are the victim of those appalling crimes and you know that you cannot get justice in your own homeland, which is absolutely the case, there is no way that the junta will face accountability inside Myanmar, then of course it's a huge thing that your truths are heard at the UN's top court, that your narratives are validated, and that you effectively become advocates for your own cause. And that's what's happening. And that's why it's so good that victims and their voices are being heard at this level of international justice. Having said that, justice delayed is justice denied. And these Rohingya people have waited since the end of 2019, which is when the Gambia first brought this case. So yes, it's an important milestone. Yes, we welcome the fact that the victims' voices are being heard, but the court needs to get a move on. We have waited long enough for justice. We need action now.
Myanmar has long denied genocide, arguing its actions were counter-terrorism. What will the court be looking for to determine whether genocide as legally defined actually took place?
Well, one of the most important things is intentionality. So yes, we know because the Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar, the IIMM, has been investigating and has lots of first-class confirmed and reconfirmed evidence of these crimes, the deliberate killings, the gang rapes, the mass rapes, the forced displacement, all of these crimes defined by the Genocide Convention, we have evidence of that. What you need to prove additionally for genocide is genocidal intent. Now, there's been a huge amount of analysis, for example, of Facebook postings, of speeches given by the junta, and it seems very clear from people like myself outside The Hague who've witnessed this, who've seen the sorts of things that have been said on social media and in public fora. There's very, very little doubt, there's no doubt at all in my mind, that there was a clear intent to commit genocide against these people. So, our hope is that the court will move very quickly to determine that that the Genocide Convention has been violated. And then, of course, the big question then is what action will the international community face? Because the court has issued what are called provisional measures and have said to the Myanmar junta, you have not just to stop the genocidal practices, you have to report back on what you've done to do that. And none of that has happened. So we have to look at bilateral enforcement measures, sanctions, for example, on the Myanmar junta to make sure that they abide by the rulings of the court.
And Chris, this case is being closely watched in relation to South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the ICJ. How might the Myanmar hearings influence that and other ongoing cases?
Look, I have to say they are completely unrelated. The evidence, the circumstances, everything that's happened in Gaza, and not just in Gaza, where, of course, I worked for many years, but also in the West Bank. That is a completely separate case. What I would like to say something about is the reason that I'm in Dili, Leste, where we have brought a case against the junta in relation to Chin State, not far from where the Rohingyas are in Rakhine State. And here we are accusing the junta of crimes against humanity and war crimes. And we brought very specific crimes here. And our hope is that the prosecutor's office will accept our case. And we hope, and of course it's a big hope, they will move to opening an investigation because, Timor-Leste transition from 1975 with Indonesian occupation and the appalling genocide, the crimes that were committed against the people of Timor-Leste, given that those same crimes are being committed today against the people of Myanmar, particularly in Chin State, we hope that the authorities here in Timor-Leste will hear the voice of fellow victims of atrocity crimes in the ASEAN region, just as they were the victims of atrocity crimes. And of course, Timor-Leste has just joined ASEAN, so it has a really powerful voice, I think, in this debate.
Okay, Chris Gunness, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme.